Hello everyone and welcome to Under Siege, a combat RTS game created by Seed Studios exclusively for the PlayStation 3 and feature remove compatibility. Despite being a downloadable title, Under Siege is massive in terms of contents and features, no wonder it comes with a platinum trophy. So I had to split this video in two parts. In the first one you are currently watching, I'll cover the basics. In the second one I'll cover other stuff such as multiplayer, level editor and other features. So don't miss that to get the whole picture. Okay, let's start with the controls. The main difference compared to the DualShock controls relates to the pointer, which is detached from the middle of the screen when using the move. By pointing at the edge of the screen you can move the camera around at angle depending speeds. The same action can also be performed via the analog stick. Cursor options allow to switch between a laser pointer solution and a position-based one. The former works the best in my opinion, especially since the latter suffers the most from the lack of any sort of formal sensitivity setting. I said formal because when using the laser pointer solution you can sort of indirectly tweak the pointer sensitivity during the calibration process. As you can see me doing here, when asked to point at the edge of the screen, by actually pointing at an imaginary TV the size of an iPad, I get a super sensitive cursor. Here instead I am pretending to be dirty rich by pointing at an imaginary TV the size of a theater screen, which translates into a very low sensitivity. Default laser pointing sensitivity is perfect as it is, so you don't really need to go through all this at all, but keep this trick in mind when calibrating in games with a similar calibration process, like shooters. One last cursor setting allows to change its size, which you can shrink and expand as you please. Here is the smallest configuration. Camera speed can also be tweaked, of course, from fast to super slow. On a side note, you can change these values by typing them in directly via the virtual keyboard, a first in a PS3 game as far as I know. While holding down the move trigger, you can zoom in and out by tilting the analog stick up or down. A clever application of motion detection relates to camera rotation, which can be performed by rolling the controller. The bigger the rolling angle, the faster the camera rotation, of course. You can also set the roll dead zone, which basically determines the sensitivity. Here you can see how it behaves at minimum. It works very well, but you can also rotate the camera in a more traditional way by holding down the move trigger while tilting the stick left and right. Okay, let's move on to units selection. You can either use L1 and L2 to scroll through the list to the right, or select them directly by pointing the cursor on them and pressing X. Oddly enough, there is no audio feedback upon direct selection. Would have been nice to have it to confirm the selection. Moving orders are issued by pressing the move button, as you can see here. To select multiple units you have various options. You can either hold down the X button to increase the size of the cursor and select all the units within it upon releasing X, or you can press down the stick to select all the units on the field, wherever they are. You can also create shortcuts to specific assortments of units by selecting a group of units and then holding down the D-pad in any of its main 4 directions. Done that, you simply tap on the D-pad direction to select the group associated with it right away. Oh, and by the way, you can also set the orientation of the units by tilting the analog stick before releasing the move button. This sort of units selection works nicely in general, but it does have a limitation. Since you can't paint the units like in Ruse and can only select multiple units that are within the cursor, if you want to put together distance units separated by other ones you don't want, you have to move them close to each other, like you're seeing here. Anyway, thanks to the immediacy of the pointer controls and the ability to turn the camera with a simple twist of the wrist, navigating the environment is very smooth procedure. In missions where fog of war is active though, you can lose your pointer in the darkness as it turns dark grey, and you can barely see it unless you find a spot of light, which is usually present at destination points. Not a big deal though, since you will mostly want to guide your troops at small steps, so to speak, as maps are relatively packed with enemies. But before talking combat, let's have a look at some units. Soldiers are one of the first units you will get under your command. Each unit has two special abilities associated with the triangle and circle, this last one available only after leveling up a bit. And in the case of the soldiers, we have got the taunt, which draws the attention of enemies within a given range, and the shield stance, which when toggled makes the soldiers super resistant to attacks, but also super slow. Archers are your main long-range unit, with arrows that can be light up with fire via the secondary special ability. Their main special ability is Cure, which restores health to units around them. Archers are unable to fight at close range, so it is important to have them at a safe distance or with the soldiers close by, ready to lure enemies away from them. Like the archers, the trapper is another delicate long-range unit, his darts having poisonous effects. His main special ability is arming bomb traps in the terrain, while the second one allows to place curative bombs that heal close-by units for a short amount of time. In case you are wondering, I will explain what's up with the spinning archers on top later. The gunner is another long-range unit, equipped with a cannon capable of dealing great damage. You can order him to shoot mortars at specific enemies, or initiate a continuous mortar barrage at a specific spot, all within a very large range. This is his main special ability. The second one allows him to jump by firing his cannon at the ground. This allows him not only to quickly reach higher ground, but also to deal damage to close enemies. These are 4 of the 9 units you will get to unlock during the game, some of which have some rather interesting abilities. Okay, now that we are done with the basics, let's see how your average mission plays out. In the single-player campaign, the units you manage to keep alive carry over from mission to mission, and you will find them in that grid below. In this case, I'm replaying one of the already completed missions, so I need to recruit my units from scratch. You use money to do so, which you are given some at the beginning of each mission, awarded during combat, and also can find in chests scattered around the maps. Money can also be used to level up your units on top of the level ups gained automatically during combat. Besides the obvious stats upgrades, units do also change in the looks as they level up. So, the first thing you need to do at the beginning of a mission is to pick up units from your collection and place them on the spawn points, the blue circles you see here. When you are done, pressing start actually begins the mission. Unlike traditional RTS games, combat in Under Siege is pretty close quarter affair. You won't be managing big armies scattered around huge maps, but rather a platoon within relatively small areas. Also, fights generally develop rather quickly, your unit's energy bar depleting at alarming speed, and since units can be replaced during the mission, tension becomes rich soil for panic when things start smelling failure. No matter how carefully you have planned something, quick reactions will be needed to cope with unforeseen trouble, especially if you intend to reach the goal with all your troops still alive. This is not easy also due to how some of your units behave. For example, it's not uncommon to see soldiers stepping out of an health regenerating circle provided by carefully placed archers, as they tend to move towards enemies automatically. There is no stick to position command, forcing you to periodically order them to fall back or the archer to move farther into the chaos. When friendly fire is on normal difficulty and above, blast damage caused by gunner mortars can kill in an instant a trio of archers unlucky enough to be approached by the same enemy the gunner was targeting. While these consequences are legit, the speed at which all of this happens contributes to a feeling of unfairness. Take a look at this example here. In this mission you are made aware of an ambush opportunity, and even suggested which units to bring to the field. Spawn points are also located in a high ground to the sides of a canyon which is supposed to be traversed by enemies. And yet, when the mission begins, the proposed strategy turns out to be ineffective, archers unable to deal serious damage to the horde, and some enemies even traversing the high ground this ranged unit is located, which means having to improvise a new strategy altogether, and do it fast. Other times the game teaches you the hard way not to spread your units too much, as they can trigger multiple enemy spawns simultaneously, leading to unpleasant situations. Now, as for those spinning archers we have seen before, that's the result of some sort of bug in pathfinding routines, which I hope is due to the unfinished state of the build I've got, which is also quite prone to crashes. While rare, bugs like this can negatively affect battles and also lead to some funny moments. While graphically excellent both at 1080p and 720p, with nicely detailed units, impressive lighting and some nice physics, Under Siege doesn't cope too well with busy situations, dropping frames when not resorting to tearing to keep up with them. This is especially true when big smoke or fire effects abound. One last technical issue I do hope is meant to be fixed in the final release is that button presses are often unregistered when using the move. In this example here I am pressing the triangle button multiple times to order the selected archers to cure. The need to wait for a cooldown period prevents them from doing so every time I press the button, but the area of effect blinks regardless, and as you can see it doesn't do so at every button press. And here ends the first part of this video analysis. Don't miss the second one, linked to at the top of this video, for further information about the multiplayer mode, the editor and the many other features supported by Under Siege. See you there, ciao!